good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Disability Tech Talk featuring Nicole Cuervo, founder and CEO of Springrose. I'm Jocelyn Cohen, Vice President of Communications and Engagement with Cerebral Palsy Alliance Research Foundation, or CPAR for short. This event is closed caption enabled, and I've turned on transcription for you. It's being recorded, and I'll send around a link once it is posted. For additional accessibility, I'll share a visual description of myself. I'm a white woman with dark brown shoulder-length hair that's down and brown eyes. I'm wearing large tortoise shell glasses and a black polo shirt with a light long-sleeved cardigan over that. Sometimes I might look like my eyes are looking away from the screen or rolling, but that is part of my cerebral palsy. In case this is your first online event with us, I'd like to tell you a bit about what CPARF does. Despite being the world's most common lifelong physical disability and affecting 18 million people worldwide, cerebral palsy is one of the most underfunded conditions. That's why CPARF funds research and innovative technology that will change what it's like to live with cerebral palsy. And last March, we ran a pilot cohort of Remarkable US, the disability tech startup accelerator that's part of the global Remarkable Accelerator program. And through seed funding, mentorships, deep dives, and support during this initiative, we help startups bring life-changing technology one step closer to the people with disabilities who need it. The world isn't built for disabled people, but thankfully there are companies built for that purpose, and Remarkable US has already worked with them. They're built to fill in the gaps, meet crucial needs, and make everyday life easier. Springrose, a member of our 2023 cohort, exemplifies this. They believe in helping people feel good in their skin, and they know that having adaptive apparel available is an important part of that. I'm thrilled that Springrose's founder and CEO, Nicole Cuervo, is here with us tonight to talk about what her company does, how they got started, what shapes their focus on intimates, what they hope people gain from their products, and what's next. So welcome, Nicole. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about Springrose, and your mission?
Sure, happy to, Jocelyn. Thank you for having me. I'll actually start with my visual description. I am a Latina white passing woman who is pretty short. I'm around 5'4". I have high cheekbones, long dark brown hair. It's currently curly. And brown eyes. I'm wearing a blue, like a darker blue one-piece suit. But yeah, it's lovely to be here. I can tell a little bit more. I'll start maybe with me because that's probably the least interesting of the two. But
Sure.
so I'm originally from Argentina, and I moved to the US early 2000s. So I've been here for a very long time. Ended up focusing most of my professional career on design thinking and strategy. And for people who might not know, design thinking is a type of research methodology, per se, where you try to develop innovative solutions for whatever problem you have through a different way of thinking. I particularly focus on human-centered design, which is a research methodology that is qualitative. And so what we do is we assume that we're not the experts at the problem, and we may not even understand what the problem is. And so we rely on individuals and their lived experience, and them sharing that and being kind of collaborative with us and helping us understand the problem, then co-creating a solution. So I did that for several years for government nonprofit clients, ended up getting my MBA at Kellogg School of Business because I wanted to understand operations and finance and accounting and all the other things that are important to start a business, because I knew that I wanted to start Springrose. And in fact, I started it July 2020, so beginning of the pandemic when I started at Kellogg, and have been working on it ever since. So at Springrose, we design adaptive intimate apparel to improve quality of life for women with limited mobility. We serve over 50 different conditions, disabilities, or injuries. So everything from a temporary broken bone or a frozen shoulder to more permanent things like CP, stroke, MS, arthritis, and a whole host of other things. Our whole kind of purpose, as I said, is to improve quality of life. And we do that by designing intimate apparel that is easy to put on, is comfortable, is attractive. It doesn't feel like a compromise, and it gives people flexibility in their morning to just make getting ready something that happens quickly and more routinely rather than a struggle or something to be unhappy about.
I like that you said that it doesn't have to be a compromise, and also that you're making something that maybe has always been stressful for someone or has recently become stressful for someone, you're taking that stress away at the beginning of their day. So that's a really important thing to do in a small but big way. So that's one of the reasons I love what you're doing at Springrose.
Thank you. It's funny how such a small thing can be such a big part of people's days, and especially when, I mean, I'm assuming you all probably know this, but a lot of so I'm able-bodied, and I feel like I should put that out there first, which is why I rely so heavily on individuals with disabilities to share their stories with me so that we can make this happen. And I think outside of the disabled community, not a lot of people know about the spoon theory, but it feels so frustrating to me that something as small as putting on your underwear or your bra should rob you of some energy in your day to do more meaningful things with your life that you would want to do. So we try and reduce as much of that friction as possible, even if it's in small ways.
That's right. You don't want to use your spoons, so to speak, on the small things. You want to get to as many big things in your day as you can. And I appreciate that you've taken the time as a non-disabled person to even know what the spoon theory is and use that sort of as a guiding philosophy for the work that you're doing. So I applaud you on that. So beyond what you've already shared, is there something that initially motivated you to create adaptive apparel, like that aha moment that this was definitely something that needed to be done?
Yeah. So my grandmother Rose, who is our inspiration and namesake, she had a lot of chronic pain. She had arthritis. She had lots of other things that you don't really, at least I was not aware of throughout most of my life, because she was a very much like a grin and bear it kind of person. And when I learned more as an adult, I was very frustrated that one of the things that caused her pain in the day was getting dressed in the morning. So putting on her compression socks, putting on her underwear, her bra, it was very difficult and finicky for her to do. So I went to a big box store, I looked online, and there weren't any adaptive options at retail. And then what you found online was, I like lingerie, I like looking nice, I like lace. And the options I found were just very sad. They weren't size inclusive, they were barely functional. And I didn't want to reach my 70s or 80s, or even just like, I'll definitely have osteoarthritis if nothing else. So like I just my entire family, it's coming for me.
You're like, it's coming, yes.
Yeah. So I don't want to personally ever be forced
Sure.
to not have a choice. It's like, this is it, and be happy that we made something, even if it's sad. And I don't like that perspective. So I started talking to my grandmother. I then did a focus group with about 10 women in her workout group. And at the time it was focused on 75 to 95. But as I talked to more women, I realized it's more of a problem for women with limited mobility than it is for somebody with age. If you're 95 and sprightly and you have no like limited mobility or disability of any kind, like you're just going to use the bra you've always been using. So the more I looked into the adaptive space, the bigger a need I saw. And yeah, I just wanted to help build something that would bring comfort.
I appreciate that on several levels. And I love that your grandma Rose kickstarted this idea for you. We have some roses in my family too, so that kind of gets me in my heart. You covered a bit of this in your last answer, but is there anything else that made you realize this was an issue for such a wide-ranging group? Was there like a specific person you met or a story you heard that made you open your eyes even wider to this issue?
There wasn't a specific person or story. It was just all of the stories. So to kickstart this process, again, my background, because it was in human-centered design and design thinking, and because I'm not the user, I was like, how many people can I talk to, and how wide a range of people can I talk to? And so I interviewed the fall of my first year at school, about 60 women at the time, who had a wide range of conditions and ages and lived in different places around the country. And they were kind enough to share their story and their time, because each of those interviews was 45 minutes to an hour. And every time I learned something new, and that to me was exciting, but it was also opened my eyes. Like even now, I learned about a new condition like a month ago that I didn't know existed.
Wow.
It's called, and I'm definitely butchering it, myositis, I believe it is. Yes, and there's a specific clinic at Johns Hopkins, and so I was talking to the OTs there, and they were really interested in bringing our product to their patients. But I'm 3 years in.
Right.
Like by now, I should know all the things, but I keep on finding conditions. I was talking to somebody yesterday because Now I'm just getting super nerdy into product because it's what I love. But
We love
I was-
nerdy over here sometimes. That's fine.
yeah, no, they were talking about does this serve somebody with Down syndrome? And I was like, why? I came into this creating it for somebody with physical mobility challenges. And so I was like, I don't know. I've never talked to somebody with Down syndrome about whether this would work for them. So I asked, do you know anybody I could talk to? And they're like, yeah, I have like 1 billion people. So I'm going to talk to them. And the person I was talking to yesterday was explaining that sometimes like Down syndrome comes with some level of dexterity challenges, which I had no idea about. So this is all to say there's always more and there's always more people to serve. And it's just everybody's kindness for sharing that with me, helping bring me and us along in this process.
And it's clear to me that you're a lifelong learner and you're just bringing that with you everywhere you go. I mean, the fact that you went into something called design thinking, and it reminds me of what you're doing right now in our Remarkable US Accelerator, where you're just really thinking through the problems in a different way and like from all the possible angles that you could. It's clear that you think that way and that you're not only are you open to it, but you thrive on it. And I think that not only will your product benefit from it, but then your future consumers will benefit from it too. Listening to your episode on our Changing What's Possible podcast, which at least a few people, because I saw them mention it, at least a few people have listened to it. So listening to your episode on our podcast, I was struck by the powers of conversation and relationships and how that helped you form your company and your philosophy and how you're moving forward. How have you developed relationships with differently disabled people while developing your bras? So we were just talking about like the different kinds of conditions that you encountered with people. How have those conversations shaped everything?
Everything basically that we've done is shaped by people with with disabilities. So it's for the product itself, every feature in the product is something that came from a conversation with somebody who could have used our product. Down to the metal in our hardware, like the slider is nickel free because I surveyed women in our Facebook. So we have a tiny Facebook community also where I just send more of like the rapid I need an answer things. And like 10% of them said they were allergic to nickel. So we got nickel free ones. I didn't have to put like the adjustability of the strap on the front or the back. And I sent an email to our mailing list and 75% of them said front, please. So it's a front slider. Every little detail of our product is made with the stories that these women and people have shared that would benefit them. And so every feature is carefully thought out. And then when it comes to other parts of the company, the same thing goes. So we partner with different, can't name them because it's not a legal formal partnership, but different foundations and associations and different rehab clinics. And so they've also given a lot of input in this process. That's been very nice. And then, yeah, it's like hard to say, like our packaging will be accessible. Like it's a bot. I can't.
That's always an issue.
Yes.
Packaging is a whole journey for anything to get something open, whether or not you're disabled. It's like, what kind of argument am I going to have with this container today?
Yeah, especially like the hard blues. But so I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see what our fulfillment partner has in terms of like the mailer that goes physically in the mail. But the box the bra comes in is adapted. It's like there's different. I'll leave it. I don't want to spoil it for when people get it. They can like see it themselves. But every piece is purposeful and built on the stories people have shared with us.
I was going to ask you later on to show us the bra, but actually I feel like now is a good time to do it because we've been talking about all the different pieces. If you want to like take us through some of the pieces of it, because it is a very visual experience.
Yeah, it is. So I have 2 samples here.
Okay.
Neither is 100% perfect. The perfect one's coming next week. It's coming on Wednesday, but that's why we're
the timing.
The good timing. Yeah, so this is our terracotta sample, as you can see. So it's a front closure bra, but it comes with a back hook and eye so that you can adjust it. That's something we heard during interviews is people really wanted a front opening bra, but because front opening bras are not adjustable on the band. It means that if you are not exactly the size they sell, it's not going to fit you. It's either going to be too tight or too loose. So we wanted to give that adjustability to people. But because I hate hook and eyes in the back, as I'm sure most people do, our hook and eye is, it's like a nice lush cushioned one.
Oh,
So you don't feel it
yeah.
stabbing into your back, which is nice when you lay on it. And then the Velcro we use, I think that's also something people tend to imagine, like a 1990s sneakers Velcro.
Absolutely.
Not what we're using. We are using Velcro, I should say, because it is probably the most adapted, particularly since magnets are great, but they can interfere potentially with pacemakers or other implants, depending on the person. And so our Velcro, hard to see it on the black, but it's like,
I can
this
see
is
it.
the rough part.
That's a very, like, I can see that there's texture there when you hold it up closely. But it looks like it's a lot finer than,
Yes.
what you're thinking about for any kind of old school Velcro strap that you've experienced on a shoe or a bag or some other thing, which is good. You also don't want it to get caught on the material of the shirt that you're wearing. So
you also don't want it to like open in the wash and then just ruin everything.
No.
No.
What's the closure like in the front? It looks very interesting. Like it's a loop.
Yeah, sorry. So it's here, I'll just show it on the black. It's so it's just a normal piece of hardware. It's called a slider in the bra business. I've learned a lot about bras in the last 3 years. And so the challenge is, originally we had one that was like this, and it just had a little stick down the middle, similar to this slider, which has a little stick and you can't really see it very much, but here's the indent.
I see the indent.
There's should be like a middle piece. We sent it to an OT partner of ours in Chicago, and she tried it on her patients who were stroke survivors. And she said, depending on the patient, it can be hard to get it into such a slim hole. So we changed it to be this wider one. But yeah, so do you want me to demo it actually?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, I'm gonna fumble through it, so please be kind.
That's fine. It's all creative.
I'll open it on this side. Yeah, that's funny.
I saw that Morgan said in the chat that they were so excited to learn from the podcast that terracotta doesn't show through white clothes. That was a new fact I learned too. I would not have thought that. Would have thought, oh, that's for my red and orange hued shirts.
Yeah. So we originally were going to make black and beige. Because we assumed if you had darker skin tone, you might go to black. It's a more classic. If you had lighter skin tones, you might want a beige, just like an everyday option.
Sure.
And I visited the factory, got a sample of our fabric, and it came in the terracotta because it was one of just their stock fabrics at the time. It was beautiful. And everybody I showed it to is just like an example of here's the fabric. We're like, wow, that color. I can't forget that color. So we ended up building our whole brand identity around that terracotta sample. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized reds and dark oranges don't show up under white, as Morgan mentioned. And it also flatters every skin tone, which is not something you would expect. So it does require some consumer education, but
and that's a different kind of accessible. That's a big issue in the fashion industry of colors coming for people of every skin tone. I can't wait for other people to discover the secret, but you're the first person I learned it from. So yes, please demo this for us.
Oh yeah. So I ended up opening, I usually take turns, but I opened this side. So that means which is the right side, which means I will pretend that I have some form of limited mobility on my left side, actually, is the way it works. It's the opposite side. So I'm just going to get up a second. So let's say I slip on the bra. I can sit back down so it's a little easier to see me. And here's our sample tag. And so what happens is you have this little piece right here. So you make it go through it.
Sure.
You grab it on the other side. It kind of does stay.
Does that groove? Yeah.
Grab it and pull.
Wow.
So that was super fun. I do that all the time. And then what's really nice about our bras, and does this one has a close enough construction to show you. The bra also comes with a little pocket on the back side of the straps. And so what this lets you do is every bra comes with 2 optional O-rings. And you would put them through, they're pretty flat, so they're not gonna like bulk off your body. You'd put them on, and that lets you open the bra by hooking or looping your finger rather than needing to grab it or pull it. And then the bra becomes really big and you can pull it over your head or step into it. That is particularly good for people with limited dexterity or chronic pain of some kind. But
you can step into it. I mean, I heard you and I understand what you said, but I have never thought of that as an option.
yeah,
To
probably the
step
first
in-
bra you can do that with.
to step into it or to just put it on in a way that works for you. And I love the idea that as long as you have the ability to use one finger on one hand, you could close this. You could put this on yourself. That
Yeah,
is
our
a
whole
huge-
thing is
Go ahead.
no, our whole thing is just to increase independence as much as possible. And in some cases, like that just might not be the situation an individual is in. But in
Right.
those cases, we want to make sure that we're reducing the friction in the caregiving process as much as possible, particularly since it's often a loved one that's doing it, and that can cause stress for both parties. So
Just in talking with you about this, and specifically, about the stress between a caregiver and the person that they're helping, and how you started this, with your grandma in mind. But I'm also thinking about younger women, like adolescents, with CP or other disabilities that will be able to do this, put their first bra on for themselves instead of having to suddenly rely on their parent to help them do something that's even more embarrassing because they're not used to their body and their body is changing. Like it's kind of monumental, at that really awkward phase of life to have this option that you didn't necessarily think you would have. So at both ends of the age spectrum and everywhere in between, it's either like giving new independence to someone, restoring independence to someone who didn't have it, or at least like increasing independence, because maybe if someone needs a little bit of help, you can still use your one finger to close it, even if you needed someone to, put it on your shoulder for you, and restoring that piece of agency that you either hadn't had or once had and lost, like that you can't put a price on that. You
that's so
really,
lovely.
so
Yeah. No, it's something I never considered that like very young transitional phase, like the adolescent stage, because we do tend to talk to a lot of women who are not teen. Like I don't think I've interviewed a teen. Well, I have interviewed one like 18-year-old. But you're right. And then one thing we're really excited about, and I'll mention this, and I'm not expecting this to go. It'll be fine if I mention it. It's okay. It's somewhere else too. But so we're developing underwear right now. I won't say the specifics because that's the interesting part. But on that same vein, you were talking about, particularly when you get your period at 13 or 14 or 12 or 11 or whatever age you are,
yeah,
that has to be not a comfortable time to be relying on somebody else to get you dressed. So I'm not saying our first product will be period underwear, but like it's very easy enough to take existing product and just add thicker linings and test that. So that's definitely the direction we want to move in, is how do we serve you at every part of your life?
absolutely. I mean, and then there's the other end of the spectrum too, right? When you're older and you're not necessarily continent and you can't, or you just can't get to the bathroom as quickly as you once could because your joints are whatever they are. There's just so many different angles you could come at it from, and it's wonderful to hear that you're thinking of things so broadly. And I won't ask you to give away the secret, but it's nice to hear that there are other things in the pipeline. So going back a second to sort of the construction of the plunge bra that you just showed us, we saw, like Katie was saying in the chat, that's like the silkiest Velcro she's ever seen in her life. I have to concur. What role does comfort play in, the bra's shape, the fabrics, like your thought process and construction of it?
Comfort is queen. We surveyed over 500 women and we asked them to rank what were the different attributes they wanted. And even more than adaptive or accessible, people wanted comfort. Like by far, it was the number one thing. And so that was our guiding North Star of everything we build obviously has to be functional, but it should also not be at the expense of comfort. And so to that end, our fabric is, well, one, the bra is wireless because we know some people love wire. I am here for it. If you love wire, go you. 2 out of the 60 women we initially interviewed said they like wires.
2.
So we made it wireless, but to make sure it's still supportive, our fabric is like a medium compression fabric, so kind of like a Spanx fabric.
Okay.
And that lets it hold things in more than a normal bra fabric would, which is super stretchy generally. We also use wider straps because then it puts less pressure on your shoulders and it digs less in. Like this thread we use, we try to make it a soft. The back again is plush. We try to hide seams as much as possible. We just, any minor improvement we can do that increases comfort, we take very seriously, and we communicate that back to our manufacturer.
I mean, I appreciate that. I think every person who wears a bra would also appreciate that. We had a few questions come in, so I'm going to go through those for now. Someone said, your bra is so pretty and thoughtfully designed. Why do you think more medical focused or adaptive products are so bland and basic? Is it a lack of creativity, financial investment, or both?
I have 3, both and.
Okay.
So I think part of it is for some reason, I really don't know why, but it's just highly underserved as a market. Like a lot of people, I think a lot of people, especially if they're able-bodied, which are generally the brands that have been making it. I think most adaptive brands that exist right now are led by somebody who's able-bodied, but with the help of people in the disabled community. And I think that was more true, particularly in the past. And I think the brands that existed at the time, particularly in 2015, when I first started thinking about this idea, I think they might not even have had anybody who's disabled opine potentially. Like, I don't think that was something people did, unfortunately. Right. I don't know for a fact, so I can't say like, yes, they didn't, but that seems to be part of it. Another one is, I think, lack of investment. It just takes to make something that's just not just like white in 3 sizes. You have to spend money, you have to invest in the development, you have to invest in your relationship with your manufacturers, you have to buy in quantities, and then it gets harder to manage your inventory. And if you're a big marketplace, you have so many SKUs. So SKUs is like per item, per color, per size is a SKU. You have so many.
It stands for stock keeping unit. It's just like the product number that's attached to an item, right?
Yeah, yes, the number comes after. It's more like the individual item. So like a size 32C in terracotta is 1 SKU of this bra specifically. So we have 16 SKUs because we have 8 sizes, 2 colors, and 1 product. But yeah, that's a good point. So SKU. And so I think part of it is like lack of investment because you have to manage so much more the more you make. 2, I don't know how involved disabled individuals were in the development of those products before. And so that also self-feeding, like if you're not involving the community, you might not be aware of how big the community is.
Right.
And then the third piece to me is that, funny enough, so we're currently applying for FSA and HSA reimbursement. So if you're based in the US, FSA and HSA is flexible savings account and health savings account.
Yes.
I hope I didn't butcher that. And it basically is, if you don't have one or if you don't know what that is, it's money that you can put into a tax-free account that you can only spend on medical products, or it doesn't always have to be like prescription products. It could be hydrogen peroxide, it can be Band-Aids, but it's some medical need. Right. I just filled out the application. I got advice from a person who used to work in those marketplaces and on how to apply. And he was saying you might get declined because it's not ugly enough, because it's not medical.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because there's this industry perspective of like, if something's medical, it looks orthopedic.
Yes, that's a
certain way.
Issue. That's a huge issue just for everything disability, mobility aids, everything. It has to look not great. It has to stand out for the wrong reasons. Yes, I agree with my friend there, Katie. It is ridiculous that you could get declined if it's not ugly.
Yeah. And so I had to make a whole case about like, despite our product, like, and they were like trying to make it look like simple and like not nice, and maybe just submit the black one and like this whole thing. But like,
Wow.
I had to, any case, so we'll see if it comes through. I'll find out in like 3 weeks, and if not, I'll apply again until they accept
That
me.
would be fantastic. I also just wonder if our society thinks of bras as a luxury, which is just strange. But
yes, also, I mean, period products are taxed, so that's a separate thing.
Yeah.
But
I don't think in New York anymore, so where I
go New York.
but yes, like I think
Yeah.
it's viewed as a luxury, even though it's essentially required in society.
Yeah, I
That's
think
another
it's also part of that is I'll get too in the weeds of this very specific HSA FSA thing. So I'll say this last thing, and then we can probably go to something more interesting.
Sure.
But they won't cover something that's considered dual use. So if you could use it for a non-medical capacity, or somebody who doesn't have a medical need buys it and could use it, then they don't consider that something that they would cover. So I had to argue that if you are fully able-bodied with no problem of any kind, you would not buy our bra, because otherwise they won't cover it.
I mean,
Which is, there are exceptions, and I pointed that out in my defense document where I was like, but you cover period products like underwear, and I don't have to have my period to wear it.
that's
But
right. And everybody is temporarily able-bodied. So if they reject you, feel free to use that as an argument.
I'm just
Like,
gonna
I'm just
send them
getting
enough
this as
emails.
insurance in case something if I don't need it right now, but something could happen, I might as well have it on hand just in case, like how you have Band-Aids and hydrogen peroxide.
They will not take that,
product.
sadly. But mastectomy bras are covered, but that got passed through a law in the 90s, I believe, that had to go through Congress for approval. It was like a women's health act of some kind.
It's amazing how like interwoven all these different parts of our society are just to get someone a bra that they can put on themselves.
Yeah.
So there was a question from Anastasia in the chat that she asked, does the bra stay put? And I mean, there's two different ways to read that. One is like, if you raise your arms, does it rise? But I'm wondering if her question was more like, do the
On the
straps
plunge?
fall? Like,
Oh, interesting.
or does it keep everything in that it needs to keep in? So there's like
Yeah.
three potential angles of that question.
I would have, okay. Anastasia, if you want to clarify, let us know. So does it move if you lift your arms? No. So we actually, one of our models for the photo shoot has a limb difference, and she did a ton of shots where she was just like showing it off and doing her thing, and like it did not move. Strap wise, our straps are really long, like really long, relative to like industry of any kind. So this size is if I'm not wrong, our size 32 to 34 double D through F is what this one should be.
Okay.
And so let me just show you the length of our strap. It might not look like a lot, but most women, when we do our fit sessions, they only adjust like up until here. So if you have like sloped shoulders, if you have scoliosis, if you have anything, like you can keep on going. I have yet to see, and I've tried it on, how many women have I tried it on? I've tried it on over probably 50 women at this point. I've yet to have somebody go even close to the end of our strap in terms of adjustability. So in that sense,
yeah,
it'll dig into you before it ever slides off. Unless you don't adjust it strongly enough. And that could be a preference in terms of like pressure and comfort, right? So that's a whole thing. And then in terms of plunge, if you are wearing the wrong size, yes, you will spill out. Yes, that is fair. We've gotten that. Yes. So we've gotten that question a lot before. It will not pop out unless we had one person who we sent a bra for part of our trial. She has MS, and she was like, my girls weren't staying in. And I was like, oh no. And she was like, yeah. Oh, and I was like, oh my God, what do we do? Do we increase coverage? What's happening? And then I was like, any chance you wore it again? She was like, oh yeah. So what happened was when she was lounging around her house and just hanging out, stayed in perfectly. When she was gardening at like a more degree angle, they came out. But that's gravity. Like we can't, if you're upright or sitting, it should stay in. If you are doing downward dog, if you are gardening at a 90-degree angle or more, then yeah, it sadly won't stay.
It's not a sports bra. That's
It's
the
not a
kind of
sports
thing
bra.
where you would,
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
sometimes people are like, I'll go jog. I was like, do not, this is not an exercise
It's
bra.
not
This is not a
fun.
high impact bra.
yes.
Our second product will be more coverage. And
That's
so that'll keep things more in any position. But this is not an active wear intense activity bra. That is a good point.
Right, because it's called a plunge, which means it's like cut a little bit lower than.
Yeah, and ours is
other
more
brands.
intensely plunged than most brands too. And that's solely because of the way the functionality works. Again, I love product and I love doing these things. So let me know if it's too detailed. But so the way to have this, it has to be below the breast, because if not, like you're not going to put Velcro on your breast.
Right.
And because of that, it is lower than most plunge bras would be, because most plunge bras might be like in between your breasts because they have a wire and they're like have a piece keeping it together in the front. And then because we have this tiny bit of space, like this tiny space, that reduces some of that tension. So that would exist in other bras to keep your breasts in. So we've had to develop other ways of doing that. But
okay. That's all very
helpful. That's a thorough enough answer.
No, but it's helpful. Anastasia, I hope that answered your question that you had. Morgan asked, can you talk more about your partnerships with the therapist and the intimacy coordinator, if you were working with them? And so thankful you provide that. I think there's a lack in the community and this helps those in need feel more comfortable. But how did that become a part of your company?
Ooh, thank you, Morgan. That's a ton of questions in one. I love it. So I'll start with that last one. So how we got in touch with physical and occupational therapists who we work with pretty closely is I was in an entrepreneurship class and I was doing the business. Everybody had their own business. And as I was talking about what we're doing, I got a message on Slack from another student in our group. And she was like, I am a PT. This would be great, or would have been great for my patients. And I was like, tell me more. And so then she introduced me to other PTs. I then reached out to my network. I was like, do you know any PTs or OTs? And then from there, it's a very word of mouth kind of group of people. And so we kept on getting intros, which was really nice. So what we did is, as I mentioned earlier, we did a lot of interviews one-on-one with women, but then to get like a wider breadth of what does it look like when you see many more people in this community, we involved PTs and OTs into giving us feedback. So for example, the fact that we have this pocket with the O-rings came from a conversation with, I believe, a hand PT who was saying it'd be nice to have O-rings somewhere on the product on the strap. And I was like, great, let's add that in. So we work pretty closely with them and we send them samples. They test it on their patients. They give us feedback. It's just a way of making the product the best it can be. In terms of the sex, intimacy, and like women's health content, so we could call out Morgan. So we have a series on pelvic floor health and pelvic floor health, not only 101, but also at the intersection of disability. We have series on how to be intimate with stoma, or like how to be intimate when you're going through menopause and you might not be feeling like yourself or like the best of yourself. We have some series on like sex for stroke survivors. So we have a lot of content. Some of it comes like curated by the community. And then some of it is, I just think this is important information to put out there. So I try to seek out people who have this information to bring us clinically relevant content that is digestible and is not on like some random hospital's website deep down. And it's like, here's the medical thing. And it's like, okay, but how do you talk about it as a human? There's so much nuance.
The person side, not the medical side. You know, we talk about disability. There's like the medical model of disability and the social model of disability. So the medical model says like, this is your diagnosis. This is a thing to be cured and fixed. And like, we will see this only in medical context. And the social model of disability says, you know, you're not disabled necessarily by your condition, but by the barriers put up around by society. So there's a piece of those things I happen to think we're kind of in the middle a lot of times. Like there are certain things I can't do, for example, that are definitely because I have CP. And there are also a lot of barriers that disable me that are outside my control and that are societal. But the idea of looking at a disabled person just as a whole person and that their disability affects the way that they exist in move through the world and communicate in the world, and the way they get dressed and the way they interact with people and the way they have relationships and all of that, that there's like every single facet of humanity to someone. I love that you're sort of tackling that as like an offshoot of the intimate apparel, that like, of course, those are related, that it's not just a utilitarian thing, that it's related to these other sides of you. And so take a look at this content. What are your thoughts? And you don't have to share all of it, kind of like you shared a teaser about some other products that you're working on. Like, what are your thoughts on further expanding that? Like, are you looking to have that be just as big a part of your company, or more of like an offshoot? Or are you not entirely sure? I'm just curious where your head is on it, if you're open to sharing.
Yeah, I don't know like percent, like I can't say like this is equivalent or an offshoot or anything like that. I can say it's something we're investing in quite a lot, and we want to be constantly developing it. So like to Morgan's point, we actually have a sex therapist who's an OT as well. He has, don't quote me, but decades of experience. I won't say how many decades, but decades plural. And she's wonderful. And so she works with mainly disabled patients who come into her because of relationship issues or intimacy or sex or whatever the case might be. But she has a wealth of knowledge. She just actually wrote the textbook on sex and intimacy and disability. And so she develops a lot of our content, because I want to make sure it's not me being like, I think. We're using somebody who's informed and an expert at this to bring this kind of knowledge and content to the community. So it's something we're always going to be developing more of, but it's not something we're like monetizing particularly. And we are a for-profit business, so I would say bras are bigger.
Yeah, it's a bonus feature, like bonus content.
It's like we want to provide some sort of social benefit for people, because to your point, when we talk about quality of life, yeah, we'd like you to like experience less pain and get dressed and all these things, but improving the other parts of your life are just as important, because to your point, you are a whole human. You're not just this fragment of your day or your life. And so that, and because we're an intimates company, it lets us talk about intimate topics. So it is a good, at least brand mesh.
That is fantastic. So while we have a little bit of time left, I have a few questions for you on the product itself, as far as, you know, what the lifetime of each garment is, what the wash instructions are, if it only comes in black and terracotta, and if you're thinking of making the whole rainbow of colors, I'm not sure. And also, you mentioned it's a thicker fabric for all of these valid reasons that make sense. Have people tried it in hot and humid climates, and what's their feedback if they have?
Yeah. Yes. I don't know. They never mentioned whether it was not breathable to them, so I can't quite speak to that part of it. One of the things we're doing, to your point about colors, is when we have the money is for it, we will expand to many more colors, and as many as we could. And is the book an Audible? Sorry, I know I'm getting distracted. I will check for you. I don't think so. It's like an OT manual textbook on like sex and intimacy for OTs and disability. But if I'll try and look up the name, and we can probably send it out afterwards or something.
Yeah, I'm happy to crowdsource it with you and send it out to folks.
Sounds good.
This is up on YouTube.
Yeah. So we're gonna expand into many more colors. It's an investment, right, to do that, and we need to make sure that we have enough sell-through, that we're not just like buying for the sake of buying. And then we're also going to experiment with different fabrics, because to your point, this one is heavier. My concern is that a lighter fabric might not be supportive. There probably is one out there that is, and we just need to find it and take the time to like make samples and test them and just do that iteratively. But we will try different fabrics, because we know people like different things. And if you have a mess, like you might need to stay cooler than you would if you have something else. So we want to make sure that we're inclusive of that.
Maybe there could be a pocket in there for cooling.
Yes. Well, I want a version to come out with a pocket for mastectomy, because we've had a lot of women who have neuropathy or have lymphedema or just have things as a result of breast cancer or breast reconstruction or anything like that. And while this bra would work for you if you have breast reconstruction, we don't currently have a pocket. So I have no idea where prosthesis stays in. Like it could, but I don't know.
So pockets on your potential list of additional features for the next.
Oh, 10 out of, I have a plan. I have so many things.
I don't doubt it at all.
have all of the money to bring them all to market at the same time, because if I was a billionaire, you would see this would be like a 40 product company right now. But we're starting small because we are small. And you mentioned washability, durability.
Mhm.
It is very durable. It's really good construction. So we use a manufacturer that's been in Colombia for decades. They're very well known. They manufacture ethically. So most of the people that work there as at least like making the garment. So I'll start at the beginning. Bras are still made by hand. Every piece of the bra is made by hand. The only piece that isn't potentially is how they cut the fabric. They, depending on the company and depending on the machinery they have, depending on the fabric, they might have a laser cutter.
Okay.
Otherwise, everything is hand sewn. It's like with a machine, but hand sewn, everything. So bras are the most challenging piece of apparel to manufacture because they have between 20 and 48 component pieces that can be really tiny and have to be sewn to the millimeter precision to make sure that it fits correctly.
No idea.
Yeah, it's the worst. I should have started with literally anything else. Got to do the hard things first.
But you're the right person to be in the space right now. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But lessons learned, man. Don't start a bra company, especially if you're reinventing the bra. But that's all to say, it's really good construction. It will last. I can't tell you how long because it actually depends very much on what size a person is. So a larger individual, like a larger chest, will probably stretch the material more than a smaller chest would, and so it would wear down faster. How many times you wash it also wears down. You can wash it. Obviously, every bra ever, the dream is to hand wash. That is often not very doable. And so if you put it in a garment bag or you just like close the Velcro and put it in the wash, you should never dry it though. But you can put it in the wash and there air dry it. That's fine. Before we go to market, actually, so we are in market right now. You can pre-order, but you can't, it doesn't come in the mail. And part of that is we want to make sure before we do that, we send it to a lab. And so our manufacturer has washed it and it doesn't bleed, nothing happens, it doesn't stretch, it's fine. But I want to wash it like 50 times, 100 times, like how many times until it breaks down?
How many times? Like that's a 0 commercial. We don't know. You don't know until you know.
You don't know. It's just a washing machine, just like cycling for like 10 hours. It's like content.
Oh my goodness. That's true. I think it just going back really quickly when I asked like if people in warmer climates if they found it difficult because it was a thicker fabric, I would say it's safe to say that they would have told you if it was just like not breathable. Because I think living in really hot climates, you're sensitive to like the apparel that makes sense on you when you're out in the humidity or the dry heat, depending on like where you are in this country. I recently learned that New York is a subtropical or tropical climate somehow, which makes sense this time of year. So I just want to see if anyone had any other questions. And while we wait to see if any other questions pop in, Nicole, was there anything else that you wanted people to know about you, the company, the product? The best way to get it is to go to the website. Is that right? So
yeah, so the best way to get us to go to our website, it's springrose.co. So spring like the season, rose like the flower, or my grandmother, and .co, not com. I wonder how many emails I don't get. And then if you pre-order now, because obviously we understand it's not great to wait a while for something, you become a founding member. And that means you not only get the 20% off now, but you get a lifetime discount and other perks like early access to new products and sales and colors and things. So we're trying to incentivize people to purchase now, not later, but it's up to every individual. And added to that, if you want to help us co-create products in the future, there's a form on our website. It's under the Our Innovation like tab or page, and it's just /innovation. You go down to the bottom and there's a form you can fill out. That'll go straight to us, and then we'll add you to either our Facebook community or we'll have a call with you depending on what you're interested in so that we can include your voice in the development process.
That is, I mean, those two things where you're a founding member and you get essentially lifetime discounts. I'm going to paste your website in the chat for everybody who's here so that they can copy it and go to the website. And then also the fact that like you're essentially creating your own roundtables for people,
Mhm.
to really give you feedback. And I appreciate that you so clearly understand that this is a process, that there's not an end point. Like, there's always positive change happening. Like, it seems like that's built into your philosophy, and that's why I'm a really big fan of your product and your company. And I love the idea of a pre-order. Honestly, like, yes, our culture is built on immediacy, but at the same time, I could go pre-order this, forget that I did it, and then at some point in the fall, I'm gonna get a package and be like, "What? I didn't order anything," and then be like, "Oh, it's the thing that I ordered several months ago. How exciting! It's getting a present for yourself." Um, Okay, so if nobody else has any other questions, then I'm gonna close this out for the night. One thing I want to share is that during the Remarkable US Accelerator, we are hosting some remarkable roundtable discussions with Nicole and the 5 other founders and companies that are in our accelerator. And then we're also going to be hosting other disabled voices roundtables in the late summer and early fall. So I will go ahead once this webinar is up on YouTube, I will go ahead and send around the link to sign up for Remarkable Roundtables if you haven't yet. And our next Disability Tech Talk will be on June 28th with Brandon Biggs from XR Navigation. You're smiling because Brandon is awesome, I think. And his company, I can't even do it justice by describing it to you, but it's basically visual or textural maps for visually impaired people. And I have learned so much from speaking with Brandon. And I learned like all the different contexts of maps. It's really fascinating. So I hope that you'll join us for that Disability Tech Talk. I want to thank you, Nicole, and thank you everyone for joining us, and keep an eye on your inbox for more about Remarkable, more about the upcoming programs I mentioned, our webinars and our podcast episodes. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. I appreciate it.